Tonight, when you hear the word mystery, you probably think of something we just haven't solved yet. Given enough time, enough computers, enough clever grad students, surely science will crack it. But some ancient mysteries are different. They aren't just unsolved, they may be unsolvable, not because we're not smart enough, because the evidence we would need no longer exists. In this video, we're looking at 7 cases where scientists, historians, and cryptographers have effectively hit a wall. They haven't stopped studying them, but many now quietly admit that a full solution may never arrive. And that is itself a clue about how fragile our understanding of the past really is. Let's start with the strangest book on Earth. 1. The Voynich Manuscript, a message we can't read. In 1912, a Polish book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich purchased a thick, illustrated manuscript from a Jesuit library in Italy. Carbon dating later showed the parchment was made sometime between 1404 and 1438. 600 years later, nobody can read a single confirmed sentence inside it. The Voynich manuscript is covered in pages of flowing script written in an unknown alphabet, surrounded by drawings of plants that don't quite exist, astronomical diagrams, zodiac wheels, and scenes of human figures bathing in strange green pools. At first, people assumed it was a lost language or a medieval cipher. Today, things are more complicated. Statistical analysis shows that the text behaves like something language-like. It follows Zipf's law, the distribution pattern of words in natural languages, and its word entropy is similar to Latin or English. Some linguists argue it has structure consistent with real language. Others argue the character sequences are too constrained and behave more like a generative system than ordinary speech. Teams have thrown everything at it: frequency analysis, machine learning, Caucus comparisons, medieval cipher reconstruction, even proposals that it encodes Hebrew, Nahuatl, or shorthand Latin. None have produced a decoding that survives peer review. The latest serious work doesn't claim to solve it. Instead, it shows that the manuscript could have been produced using a 15th century cipher that transforms normal text into Voynich-like gibberish, meaning its mystery is technically compatible with medieval technology. But there's the problem. Without a bilingual key, a clear author, or even consensus on the underlying language, every reading collapses under scrutiny. In practice, many researchers now treat the Voynich manuscript as an enduring enigma. They may understand how it behaves, they still don't know what it says, and they may never. 2. The Antikythera mechanism, the computer missing most of its parts. In 1901, divers exploring a Roman-era shipwreck off the Greek island of Antikythera found a corroded lump of bronze the size of a shoebox. Inside was something nobody expected: gears. Dozens of finely cut bronze gears, stacked and meshed together in ways that looked more like a Victorian clock than anything from ancient Greece. For decades, experts couldn't agree on what the device did. Only in the last 20 years has high-resolution X-ray CT scanning revealed enough of the internal structure to show that it was, in essence, an astronomical calculator, an analog computer that predicted the positions of the sun, moon, and eclipses using complex gear ratios. Even now, only about a third of the mechanism survives. The rest is missing, probably still lying in fragments on the seafloor or destroyed forever. Modern reconstructions can model the back dials with reasonable confidence. The front gearing, especially for planetary indications, is still debated. Some studies have even argued that manufacturing errors in the surviving gears are too severe for the device to have ever worked as intended, though that conclusion itself depends on scans that may not perfectly capture ancient tolerances. So scientists can explain parts of its operation. They cannot definitively answer the more human questions. Who funded this? Who was supposed to use it? Why did this level of technology appear and then vanish from the archaeological record for nearly 1,000 years? Those answers require texts, workshops, and intermediate devices we simply don't have. Unless another mechanism turns up in another wreck, the Antikythera mechanism may stay where it has been for over a century, partially decoded, never fully understood. 3. The lost purpose of the Nazca Lines. On the desert plains of southern Peru, Gigantic lines and figures stretch across the landscape. Monkeys, hummingbirds, spiders, geometric shapes spanning hundreds of meters. From ground level, many are invisible. From the air, they form a vast canvas. Archaeologists have proposed multiple explanations: ritual pathways, astronomical alignments, markers linked to water sources. Recently, researchers have argued that some lines point toward ancient springs, suggesting a practical connection to water in an extremely dry environment. But here's the problem. The Nazca culture left no surviving written explanation of their geoglyphs. Whatever story they told themselves when they walked those lines has vanished. So scientists can measure them, date them, map them. They can test hypotheses about water, about ritual processions, about visibility. What they cannot do is open a Nazca notebook and read, "This is what these lines are for." The best we will ever get is circumstantial evidence and models that fit some, but not all, of the designs. Linear A, when the script survives but the language doesn't. On Crete, during the Bronze Age, a civilization we call the Minoans left behind clay tablets and inscribed objects written in a script now called Linear A. We can read Linear B, a later script used for Mycenaean Greek, because it encodes a language we still know, direct living descendants. Without a bilingual inscription, something equivalent to the Rosetta Stone, the meaning of Linear A remains locked. Scholars can identify patterns, possible numbers, maybe place names. They cannot translate the tablets in the way we translated Egyptian hieroglyphs. Short of discovering a previously unknown bilingual inscription in an excavation, there may be nothing more to do. The script is here, the language it encoded is gone. 5. The origins of the Indus script. In the Indus Valley, across parts of modern Pakistan and India, a vast Bronze Age civilization built cities with grid-planned streets, sewage systems, and standardized weights. On seals and pottery, they left short strings of symbols. We call it the Indus script. Most inscriptions are only 4 to 8 characters long. There is no Rosetta Stone. There is no long text we can statistically compare. Arguments rage over whether the symbols encode language at all or function more like heraldic emblems and marks of ownership. Some studies find patterns suggestive of linguistic structure. Others argue that the brevity and repetition make full linguistic encoding unlikely. The civilization itself declined thousands of years ago. No later culture seems to have kept their writing alive, so scientists are stuck in a peculiar position. They may never know whether the Indus script carried full sentences or simply compact labels. Without longer texts, decipherment may be impossible in principle. 6. The identity of the Sea Peoples. At the end of the Bronze Age, around 1200 BCE, multiple civilizations around the eastern Mediterranean collapsed in quick succession. The Hittite Empire vanished. Cities along the Levantine coast burned. Egypt barely survived. In Egyptian texts, mysterious enemies appear, the Sea Peoples, described as coming from islands in the midst of the sea. Who were they? Migrants fleeing climate disaster? Mercenary coalitions? Displaced groups from multiple collapsing regions? Because we only have the Egyptian side of the story and a handful of other indirect references, reconstructions are speculative. Archaeologists can map destruction layers, trace movements of pottery styles, and measure changes in trade. But the Sea Peoples themselves left no clear, self-authored record saying, "We are X from Y." The more we learn about the complexity of the late Bronze Age world, the less likely it seems that there was one singular group behind the upheaval. Instead, multiple crises probably overlapped, which means the Sea Peoples may be less a single historical entity, more a catch-all label for outsiders in Egyptian texts. In that sense, the mystery isn't waiting to be solved. It reflects a limited viewpoint we can't escape. 7. The mysteries we invented ourselves. The last mystery on this list is harder to admit. Some puzzles aren't unsolved because the past is hiding them. They're unsolved because we keep projecting our own expectations onto evidence that can't bear the weight. The Voynich manuscript may behave like language, but multiple serious studies now suggest it might be a generative artifact or cipher rather than a hoax or simple text. The Antikythera mechanism might never have fully worked in the way modern reconstructions assume. In both cases, The modern craving for narrative, who wrote this? What did this machine really do? Exceeds what the surviving fragments can reasonably tell us. That doesn't mean we stop studying them. It means science has to be honest about where the evidence runs out. The older the mystery, the more likely it is that key information has been permanently erased by time. And that's the uncomfortable lesson behind all 7 of these stories. Ending, we like to imagine that given enough computing power, enough scans, enough clever algorithms, every ancient question has a waiting answer. Reality is harsher. Sometimes the message survives, but the key doesn't. Sometimes the machine survives, but half the parts are gone. Sometimes the inscription survives, but the language it encodes has no living relatives. In those cases, scientists don't throw up their hands. They map what can be mapped. They document what can be measured. They publish careful models. And then, quietly, they accept a limit. The past is not an infinite library waiting for us to check out any book we please. It's more like a shelf of damaged volumes, half-burned, missing pages, written in scripts we may never fully understand. Ancient mysteries don't just show us what we don't know. They show us how easy it is for knowledge to vanish, and how much of human history may now be permanently beyond our reach.